Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes, episode 70. We sit down with Darius Farahani, an immigrant from Iran who fled war, survived a brutal regime, and ultimately found freedom in the United States. Darius shares what it's like growing up in conflict and war, escaping dictatorship, and gaining a new appreciation for American liberty. This is a perspective you don't hear every day and you don't want to miss. Now let's get into it. Welcome to Mid-Maryland Votes. I am your host, Mark Flynn. With me is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
And we have a very special guest tonight. It is Darius Farahani. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Darius?
Sure. I guess in relation to kind of what might be interesting is I was born in Iran in 1976. I was there till 1986. Was there for some of the war that was in between Iraq and Iran for the time. I came to the U.S. in 1986, where I actually was lucky enough to meet Ethan. Went to school in Long Island. And then when the war ended, a few years after that, in 91, my father asked me to come back because he had stayed there the whole time. Went to Iran, kind of had a culture shock because you see things differently as a teenager than you do as a 9-year-old kid. You don't understand the politics or what's actually happening there. Basically got stuck there till I got my papers from the embassy that, hey, come and get your green card. Got my green card right a couple of weeks before I turned 21. Came to the U.S. and kind of went through the normal immigrant thing, went to school, worked for some businesses, had a business, had some fun hobbies, had a great time here. The ups and downs of life.
So when you said you were there for the Iran-Iraq war as well as a young person, that had to be a traumatic event. What do you remember from that war?
I remember a lot. What's weird about it is I didn't really realize kind of the effects that it had on me until probably when I was 35, 40 years old. Like all of a sudden pieces fall into your head. Oh, why am I always making sure the doors are locked? I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie. And then you look back and it kind of makes sense. As a kid, you don't get it. Like the alarms would go off, you had these black curtains because you don't want any light seeping out, because this is like, you got to think this is like not American F-22s you're talking about. This is MiG-21s. They're dropping bombs everywhere. And you don't get the gravity of these loud bangs you're hearing, that any one of them could be at your house, not to mention that's somebody's life that just got destroyed by that sound. As a kid, I went to school, tried to get good grades, played soccer. You didn't really grab it all. I remember the revolution. That's probably my first memory. I don't know if you guys ever watched the movie Argo. There's a scene in that movie where they're in the Volkswagen van and there's people screaming, "Death to the king, death to the king," Molotov cocktails are going off. I lived that scene. That's my first actual conscious memory as a 3-year-old. He's being stuck in the middle of just a wave of people screaming, "Death to the king, death to the king, death to the king."
And just for our viewers' benefit, you're talking about the Shah of Iran.
Yes, this was the 1979 Islamic Revolution, which kind of, there was glimmers of it in 1977. We can get into kind of how that went to be, and at least my perspective of it. So yeah, all that kind of stuff. Like we used to run to, because Iran's and Tehran, where I lived, is like an ancient city with flat tops like Italy. You don't have like the American, the V-shaped roofs. So when the alarms would go off, us and the kids would run up and look at the tracer fire. Because again, for us, it just looks like fireworks. You see explosions in the distance, sometimes a little bit too close for comfort. And you kind of didn't understand why the men were chain smoking and the women were just like in the panic mode. Because I think they understood what was happening completely. They understood that's people being killed. And as a kid, you're just like almost in awe of it. And then later on, I realized, oh, there's a reason why I have a glove at hand's reach at all times. There's a reason I wake up in the middle of the night and make sure all the doors are locked. Kind of that you thought that's normal, and then you grow older and you're like, okay, this is a little bit odd that you're like this. And I kind of related to the way I grew up. Like I skydived for 18 years. I like fast bikes. it's like that's the level where I feel most alive. Like when I remember my brother had this story. He's walking, my father's taking my brother to the doctor, and all of a sudden, there's gunfire everywhere. And my dad calmly looks at my brother and says, just keep your head down, sweetheart. We're just going to go to the doctor. Like none of this stuff's normal, but you kind of think of it as normal because that's what you know.
As a child, it becomes the new normal, really.
It's just what it is.
And of course, one of the reasons that we are talking today is because of the implications that what's happening on Iran and the implications it has for the entire world.
Yes.
It is making the news in America, probably not as much as it should.
Like secret police showing up in cars with no license plates, grabbing some young guy who at that time, as a 10-year-old, you're like, that's an old dude. But some 19-year-old, some 18-year-old disappears. You don't know what happens to them, like a normal thing that happened daily.
And then at the age of 9, you came to my hometown on sleepy Long Island, where the most violent, fast-paced thing that happens, someone runs off of the road at slow speed and gets a fender bender hitting a tree.
No.
And then that's where you find yourself in a foreign country, foreign language with us. Right.
Yeah.
And our graduating class was, I believe, about approximately 30 kids. You also were the only non-white child in the class. Yep. So all of that, what was it like going from what was happening in Iran to what was happening in our sleepy town?
I mean, talk about a change of venue, right? I mean, I think even for American standards, where we lived was more calm than most other places. It's weird because I can give you two perspectives of it. I can tell you how I felt then as a kid who didn't understand all of it. And I can tell you as an older guy what I saw at it. If you remember, I was definitely not a popular kid. Had my own anger issues, which now looking at it could have been obvious where all that came from. My father was still in Iran. I'd get to talk to him maybe once or twice a month. And my father was a businessman, and I lived a life where I never thought about money. We weren't poor. It just, the idea of bills was never a thing that was, I was familiar with because I had the luxury of not worrying about it. When we came to America, because of I believe the sanctions, my father wasn't really allowed to send us any money. I think he was able to sneak $3,000 a year. So I went from being the kid of a prominent guy who's spoiled, let's be honest, pretty spoiled, to being dirt broke in where we lived. And so I had resentment everywhere, pouring out of every orifice of my body. I was resentful. I was angry. To me, I didn't understand why my father had sent me to America. Again, as a kid, I didn't understand he was actually rescuing me from what was coming. In my head, I was just like, oh, I don't have my friends. My dad's not around. I'm poor now. Everybody hates me. So that, and I think you remember, I was kind of resentful. I was angry. But now, again, this is, I think, why parents make the decisions and not kids. Grateful, 100% grateful that he sent me here. So, and then when the war ended at 16, I went back, and that's with, a mind of a teenager who understands politics, who's a bit rebellious, and just had the shock of, wait a minute, what the heck did I just walk into?
Your father, it's not just that he stayed in Iran and was a businessman before and after, but he actually worked against the Ayatollah Khomeini and the regime.
I would phrase that correct. He wasn't part of an opposition. He just did not play along with them. So, for example, because my dad is a businessman, he's not a politics guy. He thinks politicians are dirty. You know what I mean? That's the way he looks at it, which as an older guy, I kind of understand. So he wasn't working, I want to say, against them. I don't want to give that image. But what he was not playing along with them. Like, it became custom to have beards. My father wore a suit, clean shaved every day. Friday night mandatory prayer, and they would close guns that everybody has to go, and my dad would go and look at them and be like, open guns or else he'd come home. So little rebellious things like that, which could have meant his life in that in that environment. And when the revolution happened, again, my dad might not be very traditionally educated, but if you saw our books, he's a student of history. He's read, I don't know how, our library is just the books he's read. So he immediately could see, because going to the seed of where this revolution started, it was communists, Islamists, and liberals. So my father, just being a student of history, also remembering what the country was before Reza Shah and then his son Mohammad Reza Shah took over, knew that socialism is a nightmare, could see through the lies. Because if you look at what was promised during the Islamic Revolution, it was very much like the new mayor of New York City. Free groceries, hate the rich, free education, everything is going to be free, everything is good. That kind of liberal socialism mentality, which, let's be honest, has never worked for the human species. Like, there isn't even one example of it working. The best way I can describe Persians to Americans, our culture, is like that stereotypical Japanese, where he's the eldest, you're never going to disrespect him. And he would argue with my younger uncles who were like, no, this revolution's for the people, man. And it's like, no, it's not. You're going to have horrors beyond belief if you let these people take power. And he wasn't wrong.
And one of the things that you're mentioning with how the things that were said by the Ayatollah and the regime was the same things that are being said by Mandami and various socialists in America today. Yes, there was a refugee from North Korea, a lady who lives in Manhattan, and is active even to this day. And that's exactly what she says, is the same thing you said, that what her grandparents explained to her is that decades ago, during that socialist revolution in North Korea, the phrase was simply pork in every pot, but essentially everything will be free. All you have to do is give me control of the farms. And here, when you mentioned Mandami, it was just 1 week into his administration when the statement was made that owning a home is white supremacy. So it's different marketing of all the same concepts.
Well, the scary thing for me is we've gotten to a point, it could be my frustration with what's going on in Iran and just the lack of response from the left. Every person I see who's showing support is a conservative, whether it's a conservative celebrity or whether it's Ted Cruz, whether it's President Donald Trump. I see absolute silence from the left, and some of them even support the Islamic Republic, which for me, it's like just shows this lack of understanding of what's actually happening there. But my biggest issue right now so I am very frustrated with the Democrats and the liberals more than I normally was. But the biggest frustration I have is that the facts don't matter. You need a place to be able to have a conversation. We can have different views, but if you're irrational and illogical, I have no place to go with you. And that's the biggest issue I'm seeing right now. Luckily, I would say they are the extremely loud and focused on minority. Because I talk to a lot of people, and even though if we don't see things eye to eye, we at least live in the reality of the world. Even liberals like Bill Maher comes to mind. I got to give him credit. He made a whole season how socialism doesn't work, guys. Like, this is the end of our party if we go down this road. So what's scary for me is, again, what happened in Iran. If you go and Google, Iran 1978, 1977, you see a metropolitan, westernized country, very advanced, progressive, everything is great. And you Google 1979, 1980, and it looks like we went back 300 years. And it was, again, the same promises. Now, understand that not everyone in the population wanted the revolution, but it happened. And now you have 47 years of horror because you allowed these people to do what they did, which is ruin the country, ruin generations, my future, the generation after me, and the kids right now on the streets who are dying by the thousands.
You're talking about the protesters right now.
Yes, sir.
And just to catch our viewers up, There's been another uprising in Iran.
Yeah.
That the counter protesters are all young people who want their freedom back. They want their liberties back. They want their country back.
You went through the revolution, the bombings, the war, as you described earlier. Then you came to Long Island. Obviously, that's where we met. And then I remember you went back to Iran, but now you went back to a different Iran. You went back to an Iran where the revolution was over. And all the control, both the poverty and the control mechanisms were in place.
Yeah.
What was that Iran like?
It was like, when I explain it, like, my wife's American. When I explain it to her, people look at you like you're making things up because of how insane it sounds. But having short sleeves was illegal. You'd get arrested for listening to Western music. If you had a girlfriend, God knows what they would do to you. And it was, there was times they would clamp down, and then there's times where it would seem like they're not paying too much attention. So there was no consistency. But getting shot at, random, we have like DUI stops in America, random stops, and just for being young and out, you didn't know where you would end up. And where you would end up, you didn't know if they were just going to cut your hair, shave your head, they were going to give you a talking to and a beating, or you'd never come back again. It was just a level of kind of stress, which had been normalized for us who live there. But when you tell Americans, who luckily have never been through anything like that, they look at you like, what are you talking about? I had one of my American friends be like, well, why wouldn't you go to like the AG? I'm like, the whole system is the problem. It's not like you can be like, oh, the system is corrupt. You have no one to go to. And what they did was, which is the problem we have now, which is why I'm probably a Second Amendment, for some people think nut, but I think I'm actually sane, is what's happening in Iran right now is because they have no guns. They've hired mercenaries from Iraq, from Yemen, from any of these Islamic crazy people. They're paying them to kill the Iranian people. And when you have no weapons, when you have no way to retaliate, your only option is to die. Like, people don't understand that. The people we're talking about here have no love for anything. They just want to hold on to power. That's all they want. Iran's a very rich country. They've made themselves billionaires. Their kids live in Switzerland, the so-called leadership. So they're hypocrites. And they've done this every time, by the way. It's just, this is the grandest scale we've seen. It happened, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. It happened under Obama, where he turned his back to the people. And I have to kind of measure myself because I'm an American citizen. So I understand in a way where if it's not top news for Americans, you know what I mean? Because I look at myself, I'm like, okay, some stuff was happening in Africa where you just worked up about it. Probably not, I'll be honest. But this is, this is who I feel is my people also. So it's more personal. But I do think I can make the case why helping the Iranian people would be an America first move, which I am for America first. You know what I mean? I took an oath to this Constitution when I became a citizen. I took an oath to this country, and I take that stuff seriously. So I do think it's an America first move. I think anybody who understands the geopolitics of the region, helping those people would make a big investment in the U.S. You have the proxies disappearing, all the terrorist groups who've taken American lives, who are being supported by the Iranian Islamic regime. You have 80 million people. Now, I've lived there. They love America. The people, it's the weirdest thing about Iran is the government. I've never seen a population where the government who sets policy so different than the people. Like, the Iranian people have no anti-Semitism in them. We're ancient people, friends to the Jewish people. But you look at the Iranian government, it's all anti-Israel, 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 supporting Hezbollah, supporting all these things. So there's this separation, and it's reached this point where I think what's also happened is there's been an awakening, maybe for information, maybe because of the internet, because Iran was conquered by the Muslims. So I think, but in our culture, the things we value are the Zoroastrian, ancient Persian stuff. So I think they really want complete separation of Islam. They want it to be a secular country. And I think that would be good for America. I mean, American economy, you have 80 million people who are hungry for American stuff, whether it's Nikes, jeans, everything, arts. They love the American stuff. So you have a whole new economy that opens up. That's the level of allies we were with the United States. So, and it is a fight against kind of like the conquering of Islam. That's the other way. You have the Arab nations right now, who I think they're putting pressure on our president because of the many deals he's got to not intervene. I think the economic and the geopolitical realm also has a huge positive if America intervenes. I really do. And I think America would be embraced. You know, what we were told in Iraq. Well, Iraq is a country that I'm sure you guys are both students of history. The borders were drawn in World War I. Iran's borders have been there for 1,000 years. So the people's patriotism for the country is very real. It's very important to them. So if President Trump gives the word and they actually strike and cut the snake's head off and give the people, I even, for the longest time, I'm like, just drop them weapons. Every Iranian is compulsory to serve. They know how to use an AK. They know how to use weapons. Just drop them weapons so they can fight. Fly over a stealth, drop weapons, and them say, notes, here you go. Here's some ammo. Here's some weapons. Here's a couple of RPGs. It will cost us nothing in the grand scheme of what we spend on military. Allow the people to fight, and they will never forget what America did for them. Never.
Darius, you bring up a really interesting point, which most Americans are ignorant of, and the fact that the Persian culture goes back thousands of years, and Americans equate Iran with Arab Muslim culture, but that's really not the case, and it hasn't been the case except for the last 47 years. In essence, why don't you talk about the fact that these Muslim extremists pretty much conquered Iran and took over the culture? They're almost like invading an invading army that is occupying a country that does not want them there.
The way I look at it is the Arab invasion. And to give you a perspective, I don't know if you guys remember the horrors of ISIS. Mm-hmm. That was the second caliphate or caliphate, if I want to say it in the English word. The first one was the one that conquered almost to Spain, you know. So in 633, they invade Iran. And what they did was, and in my opinion, this is the continuation of that invasion. So this is 480 something years later, 500 years later, Iran's still trying to get free from that initial invasion of the Muslims. So, and not to justify it for you guys, but it's funny for me because a lot of times if you speak to Persians, there's a lot of presumptions in America. They think there's some racism in Iran against Jews, against Christians, and it's like, I can tell you firsthand there's zero, but we hate the Arabs. I'm not saying that's an okay thing, because not every Arab's the same. But if I'm being honest about the culture there, they hate us too. And they do not like each other. Part of it is the separation of Sunni and Shia. But the whole reason the Shia religion came to be is Iran wanted to separate itself from its conquerors. So when we were conquered, it was because of the weakness. They were fighting the Byzantines and the military was weak and they lost it. A lot of people will say, well, why are Iranians Muslim? Well, if you understand the system that was placed for hundreds of years and generations, they would cut out your tongue if you spoke Farsi. You weren't allowed, you were taxed if you were Zoroastrian and not Muslim. You were not allowed to ride a horse. You were not allowed to use the markets. So it's that kind of mentality over hundreds of years that people converted. Also, you look at what's the punishment for leaving the Islamic faith? Death. So it makes it kind of a one-way answer that you're going to convert and not die and be able to feed your kids and have a family. And what they did was the same thing as ISIS did, which is, I don't know if you guys remember, they would blow up 4,000-year-old, 5,000-year-old historical sites, because in their belief, no history before Islam matters, which is, 1,500 years old. So they tried to do the same thing to the Zoroastrians of Iran, the Persian culture. And we're just a different people. If you go back in time, the Persians are the Aryan race. So we're not Arabs. I really look at this Iran under Cyrus, going back 2500 BC, was culturally more advanced than Saudi Arabia is today. Now, they have money. I get it. They have the oil. But you look at it, they just allowed their women to drive in historical terms yesterday. And there's records of female admirals in Cyrus's navy. So culturally, we're absolutely on different spectrums of what we value. It makes sense to me, like Islam makes sense for where it originated from the Arabian Peninsula, because there were nomads. They were, according to their own, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to them, but according to their own words, there were savages. They had a million gods. They would bury their young girls alive so the fruit would grow. So for that kind of area, I understand if you have this convert or die mentality, and Islam might have been an upgrade for them. But for every other place where it already had thousands of years of culture, whether it be Europe, whether it be Persia, it was a huge downgrade. It was a savage religion.
But one of the things that you had mentioned is that during the revolution, when the bombings and such first started, you said there were three groups in Iran that were kind of the force behind the revolution, even though it was always a minority of people that ever pushed for what your country's experiencing. Well, your country's America now, but what your homeland is experiencing. And you said that it was Muslims, socialists, and liberals.
And communists,
What do you mean by that? What role did those three different groups, and what connection did those three groups have?
The connection between them is the socialist ideas, because where it connects is they all believe that the wealth of the nation should be shared by everyone, and the mechanism they use that is the same socialist ideas. You're going to get free school, free food, like you said about North Korea. Everything should be free. These rich people are stealing it. There's corruption. The motivation was the same. Of course, as soon as the Islamists of these three groups took control, guess what it did? It killed all the communists, killed the Mujahideen, which are the liberals, killed everyone that was opposition. Like any revolution, the first 2 or 3 years are just murder the people who actually were fighting with you and grab the power. One of the unfortunate things that happened in Iran was when Iraq invaded Iran. I don't think the revolution would have gotten so strong if they didn't. Because again, going back to the Persian history, we view the land as holy, like the Iranian land as holy. And remember the hatred for Arabs for centuries and centuries of fighting that we've had. So all of a sudden Iraq invades. Now you have a bigger threat. You can't really try to work. You just have to unite to fight this invasion. So what happens is people united. They fought to kick them out, and you hear that they're raping. Arabs are killing your people, raping our women, killing our children. You can understand the patriotism that grows in anyone who has a soul. So this was like World War I trench warfare style.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
It was a brutal war where I think 1.3 million people died. This is when the population was maybe 25 million. So that's a huge portion of the people. Our borders were the same for thousands of years. We're not going to lose it to Saddam Hussein. After the war, I came right after the war, the religious police were extremely active in enforcing their laws, enforcing their hijab, making sure there's no dissension. And it's a weird place to live in. Like in school, they're watching you. I remember when I'd first come back, typical American kid. So when something doesn't make sense to the religious guy, I would be like, hey, this doesn't make sense. And then I would see a couple of my friends looking at me like, and then they'd tell me afterwards, dude, you can't do that here. They'll come for your family. So they're going to come for your mother. They're going to come for your brother. They're going to come for your cousin. They're going to come for your father. So that fear is like a normal fear that the people there live with. You have to have the leader's picture on your store, or someone's going to come and be like, why don't you have the leader's picture? Do you hate us? Are you against us? And so it's a weird environment, man. It's a weird environment to live in.
Are you seeing correlations between what your nation lived through 40 years ago and today in America?
I am, and I'll be honest, it scares the crap out of me. And the reason it scares the crap out of me is I look at Iran, that's my point of reference, of what it was and what it turned to. I mean, you're talking about a 180 of epic proportions. I believe President Trump's right. These people are getting money from somewhere. This is being supported from somewhere. Now, my theory is, I think any kind of tactician could see you can't attack America. It's too big. The population's too armed. But we have enemies. There's people who, even our allies, I think they would like to be number one. I think that's just the way it works, you know, but we have real enemies. What do these enemies would do is separate us from within, attack the country from within, have it self-disintegrate, and then you have a chance. You have power, you have your influences, right? All of a sudden, again, we live in America, freedom of religion, but you have a Muslim mayor in NYC talking about Muslim ways of living. You can be Muslim, but we have a constitution here. We have a way of doing business here. So the correlation I see is just, one, there's way too much attention paid to the loud minority. Like, that's insane to me, that everybody I seem to meet and talk to seems to be irrational. But if I turn on the TV, it's just a bunch of insane people. Mm-hmm. And what gets me about the liberals is, what is your principle? What do you stand for? Other than just chaos. If you want anarchy, then you got to be treated like an anarchist, which is you need to be taken out. Because anywhere there's been anarchy, it's horrors beyond your worst comprehension seem to come to life. So what is your principle? Okay, you say at first you're like, oh, Donald Trump's going to destroy democracy. Okay, what's worse for democracy than trying to assassinate someone running for president? What's worse for democracy than when you celebrate when they killed Charlie Kirk? What's worse for democracy when you're literally pushing so non-American citizens vote in our elections? What is your principle? You talk about human rights, you talk about not being violent. Who's burning the Teslas? Who's setting shops on fire? Who wants to defund the police? How did that go in Seattle, by the way? Did that go well? Like within what, 15 seconds, a drug lord had taken over? Countless murders, countless. I have a friend who lost a friend who was trying to document this because the police were told to stand down. So the horror for me is if this actually catches on. And then, I mean, this might be controversial. I absolutely do think that they rigged the election in 2020. I think they did a lot of shady stuff in 2020. So whoever's running this, whoever's behind this, whether it's George Soros or his like, who's just funding this, they're getting money from somewhere. I don't get the motivation, right? I don't understand the motivation at all, because unless it is like you do want to burn everything down so you can be king of the ashes, that's the only thing I see, which doesn't make sense to someone who's rational, someone who cares about people, someone who actually values human life. But think of how close we came. Imagine if Kamala had won. Imagine if Elon Musk had not opened up Twitter. These are just two events that could have easily gone one way or another. Where would we be today? The borders would still be open, and you would be an idiot to think that the rest of the world doesn't see the border open and they come from everywhere. You would be an idiot if you don't think they're not dumping their criminals. They're mentally insane. It's our problem now. There's no country that has an open border. Imagine if the borders were open. Imagine if they do what they've been doing with the census, they count everyone, not just American citizens. Imagine if we don't go to a paper ballot, which we should go to. Imagine if they don't require voter ID. What are these people getting at? You're literally trying to tear down the democracy. For me, again, I didn't grow up Republican. I didn't grow up Democrat. Just looking at it rationally, it seems like they're doing everything in their power to destroy this country. And if America goes, who's the light? You want China? You want Russia? Who's gonna have the light of freedom? I mean, it's a sad day for humanity, not just Americans. If we fail at this, which I'm so glad we did that course correction. Trump getting elected, that map being fully read, I think it's obvious most of the people are rational. So whether they're liberal or they're Democrat, Republican, I think most people can see, okay, we can't have sex offenders in our country just running amok. We can't have open borders. We can't be weak. They're all the things that make sense. But again, the media, I mean, look at what's happening in Minneapolis right now. That scares me because, again, to me, we're a lot closer to them causing this chaos and us losing everything. And the other thing is, it's not like you can wake up the next day and be like, oops, we're going to get everything back. I think within 3 or 4 years of the Iranian Revolution, people knew it was a mistake. It's been 47 years, man. How much blood, how much treasure, how much futures have been just destroyed. So that scared the crap out of me, man, that we're in this place where I feel like I can't even have a conversation. You go on Facebook and you see the posts. One of the posts I saw was one of these liberal kids when Charlie Kirk had been killed, assassinated, murdered. Oh, I don't cry for Nazis. And I'm like, Nazis? Was he making human lampshades? Did he have a concentration camp? Was he separating and starving people? Because I don't remember Charlie Kirk doing any of that stuff. So how do you communicate with someone that that's their reality? Where do you go from there?
Darius, you hit it on it earlier, and it's really a fascinating point because you cannot argue with people who won't accept facts as reality. And the truth is the far left have created their own version of reality where, most people can't even relate to it. And as you said, there's no way to argue or discuss things when people don't accept the same facts.
Again, I don't want to be too mean to them, but I think they're dumb or they're naive or they have no wisdom, right? You don't let's use the NYC guy. Okay, free groceries. Okay, sounds great if you're a child and you don't think that. How does free groceries work? Okay, you need a shop. You need people to stock the shelves. You need a farmer to grow the stuff. You need transportation to bring the stuff. How does that work? When you mechanize your liberal idea, whether it's socialism or communism, how does that actually work? And it always falls apart.
Socialism hasn't worked anywhere.
No.
Argentina, Venezuela, North Korea, China. It just goes on and on and on. It has never worked. And what it has worked to do is to take away the freedoms of the working class people.
You brought something up that, again, not to be on this liberal rant, but I think they deserve it. You brought up Venezuela. Explain that to me, okay? President Trump removes this narco-terrorist. The people of Venezuela are on the streets by the millions, dancing, celebrating, thanking President Trump, thanking our troops, thanking the American people. You're protesting to put Maduro back in power.
And Darius, there's never a time where a far left liberal won't pick the wrong person to support in anything that they deal with, whether it be the criminal who gets shot by the police or the terrorist leader who we take out of power. And frankly, we all know the unwritten thing in the room is that Trump derangement syndrome on the left it's real. It's a very real mental illness.
I used to laugh at that the first time I heard it. I'm a 100% believer. What's the other explanation other than you just hate Trump? You just hate Trump. That's, I think, one of the reasons you're seeing no support by the left for the Iranian people who are dying by the tens of thousands, because Trump said he was going to help them. I really feel like it's a real thing because I've seen it in friends who are liberals. I mean, you mentioned that crime is down historically. They don't care. The borders are closed. They don't care. Remember eggs? They're cheaper now. They don't care. Remember gas is cheaper now. They don't care. So if the numbers and the facts don't matter, what do we do? Serious question. What do we do with these people? And I had a very interesting person I was talking to. He says we have to be their guardian. That's really what we have to do. We have to treat them like children who are too dumb to help themselves. We'll make the right decisions. They reluctantly are going to benefit for it, for having a better life. And maybe someday they'll actually learn that this is a great country. There's a reason everybody wants to come here. We have not a perfect system. There hasn't been a perfect system that's existed in human history, but we have the most perfect system. I don't want anything bad to happen to any of my fellow Americans, but I'll be damned if I let you set this place on fire. I'll be damned if I sit there and let you bring socialism and these idiotic ideas that have never worked and destroy this nation. So, yeah, I think we need to guard them, but I think we also need to be very aware that this is a dangerous thing that they're playing with.
I want to thank you for coming on today.
Hey, thank you guys for having me.
You've given us a perspective that is very few people have lived through. You're one of the few people in the world that has that perspective, and you've brought it to us.
Really appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity. Obviously, I'm nobody famous. I'm just somebody living and very close to this situation. So I really appreciate you guys just giving me a platform to kind of explain what's happening in Iran, what the cause of it was, and hoping that people will actually realize it's the right move, not just for humanitarian reasons, but I think it's the right move for America as well. It will make America stronger.
Darius, we want to thank you. You might not be famous, but you're fascinating, and your story is fascinating as well. And I can tell you that from a perspective of somebody who's traveled the world, you are the kind of immigrant that makes America great.
Thank you,
somebody who comes over here, learns the language and the culture, how to love this country, and wants to help make this country the great country that it really is, and appreciates it. I mean, the appreciation that immigrants show is really what America is all about.
Like my brother will say, a bad day in America is better than a good day in most other countries in the world. That's kind of a gift that we have as immigrants, is because you have that other perspective. Like, you might not sit here and be like, oh, I live in a peaceful house with my American wife. No one's questioned me. Why is our religion not the same? Why is blah, blah, blah? But for me, who's lived that place where you have, like, you just appreciate just the peace, the ability to have your own destiny in your own hands. So I think that's why you see a lot of immigrants who are extreme patriots of this country, is because we absolutely appreciate it.
We have run out of time, Darius, but I can tell you this. We have just scratched the surface of what we would love to talk to you about. Please promise me you'll come back on.
Hey guys, it was a pleasure. Ethan, always good seeing you. Mark Flynn, thank you so much.
Darius, that's the second thing you said that was wrong, though. It's never a pleasure to see Ethan, okay? Hey, this has been Mark Flynn with Mid-Maryland Votes. With me, as always, is my co-host,
Ethan Lowen.
We want to thank Darius Farahani again for joining us for a great perspective. If you like the content you've seen today, go ahead and share it with a friend. If you hated it, share it with your enemy. We are equal opportunity entertainment. Thanks again. We'll see you next time on Mid-Maryland Votes. That wraps up Mid-Maryland Votes, episode 70 with Darius Farahani. His story reminds us that freedom isn't guaranteed, it's earned, defended, and deeply valued by those who've lived without it. Whether you agree or disagree, voices shaped by war and oppression bring important perspectives to today's conversations. Like, follow, and share for more content like this, and find Mid-Maryland Votes on both Facebook and YouTube.